I stared at my laptop screen, not believing what I was seeing. After 5 years of silence, there it was, an email from my sister Julia. I'd had this email address since high school and never changed it. Maybe that's how she found me. Dear Michelle, it read, I'm not sure if you're still using this email, but I haven't found any other way to contact you. I'm having a baby shower in 2 weeks at Mom and Dad's house. Everyone will be there, and we'd all love for you to come. It's time you stopped hiding from us. I sat back in my chair, my heart racing. 5 years, 5 whole years since I'd spoken to any of them, my parents, Julia, or any of our extended family. I didn't post on social media, didn't share photos, didn't tell them anything about my life. As far as they knew, I had disappeared. I'm Michelle, 30 years old now. Back then, I was 25, living in the same town where I grew up, working at a marketing firm, and engaged to be married. Everything was normal until that night, the night of my engagement party. My finger hovered over the delete button. I should just erase this email and carry on with my life. That's what I'd been doing for 5 years, and it had worked out pretty well for me. But something stopped me. Maybe it was time. Maybe I should face them. I picked up my phone and dialed. Hey, what's up? A deep voice answered. You won't believe who just emailed me, I said, my sister. She's having a baby shower and wants me to come. After all this time? What are you going to do? I twirled a strand of hair around my finger, something I always did when I was nervous. I think I'm going to go. Are you sure? After everything they did? Yeah, I think it's time, it's been 5 years. After we hung up, I booked a flight. The baby shower was in 2 weeks at my parents' house, a 6-hour flight away. I moved to a different state after everything fell apart, putting as much distance between us as possible. As I packed my suitcase, I wondered what they all looked like now. Did my mom still dye her hair that unnatural shade of blonde? Did my dad still have that bushy mustache? And Julia, was she glowing with pregnancy the way expectant mothers are supposed to? On the flight, I couldn't stop my mind from wandering back to that night. The night everything changed. My engagement party. We were at my parents' house, and everything had been going according to plan. The decorations were perfect, the food was delicious, and everyone was having a good time. Until the toasts began. When it was Julia's turn to speak, she stood up, glass in hand. I expected her to say something sweet, something about how happy she was for me. Instead, she said, I can't stand by and watch this engagement happen, I'm against it. The room went completely silent. I'd been in love with him for a long time, and he's in love with me too. I remember looking at my fiancé, expecting him to deny it, to tell her she was crazy. But he just stood up, his face pale. It's true, he said, I didn't know how to tell you, Michelle. But I want to marry Julia, not you. The room started spinning. I couldn't breathe. Without saying a word, I ran out of the house, called a taxi, and went straight to my apartment. A couple of days later, my parents called. I thought they would comfort me, tell me they were sorry about what happened. Instead, they told me I should make peace with Julia and be happy for her. That's when I decided to cut ties with all of them. I quit my job, packed my things, and moved to another state to start over. For weeks after that, relatives called and messaged me on social media. They were always too involved in everyone's business. They told me I shouldn't be jealous, that I was overreacting, that I was acting like a child, and that I should come back. But I didn't respond to any of them. I deleted all my social media accounts and changed my phone number. I wanted a fresh start, away from all of them. Now, 5 years later, I was going back. As the plane began its descent, my stomach knotted with anxiety. Was I making a mistake? Maybe. But I was also curious. I wanted to see their faces when I walked in. I wanted to see if they regretted what they had done. I took a taxi from the airport to my parents' house. The driver kept trying to make small talk, but I was too nervous to engage. When we pulled up to the familiar 2-story house, I paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, gathering my courage. Taking a deep breath, I walked up to the front door and rang the doorbell. My mother opened the door, and for a moment, she didn't recognize me. Then her eyes widened in shock. "Michelle?" she gasped. "Hi, Mom," I said, forcing a smile. "I got Julia's invitation." I stepped into my parents' house, and all eyes turned to me. The chatter died down as relatives stared in disbelief. My mom led me into the living room where everyone had gathered. Dad stood frozen, punch cup in hand. "Michelle," he finally managed, "is that really you?" Before I could answer, I heard whispers around the room. Relatives looked me up and down, muttering to each other. I caught snippets of their conversation. "She's changed so much. Doesn't even look like the same person." My Aunt Debbie, never one to keep opinions to herself, leaned toward my cousin and said loud enough for me to hear, "She's aged a lot, hasn't she?" I pretended not to hear, scanning the room until I spotted Julia. She stood in the center of the room, her pregnant belly prominently displayed under a tight blue dress. When our eyes met, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She walked over to me, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. "So glad you could make it," she said with a fake sweetness that made my teeth hurt. "I knew you'd come alone. Isn't it about time you found yourself a man?" I bit my tongue, determined not to let her get to me. "Nice to see you too, Julia." Aunt Debbie swooped in, glass of wine in hand. "Michelle, dear, you know I had 3 children by the time I was your age." She looked me up and down critically. "The clock is ticking, you know." My mother appeared at my side, nodding in agreement. "Julia's about to have her first baby, and you're still not even married." She sighed dramatically. "You don't have much time left." I forced a smile, though inside I was seething. This was exactly why I'd stayed away for 5 years. Every family gathering turned into a critique of my life choices. My cousin Tara grabbed my arm, pulling me aside. "You need to get over what happened," she said firmly. "That tragedy with your fiancé was 5 years ago. You need to move on, find someone new." She pulled out her phone. "I met my husband on this dating app. Let me sign you up right now." "No thanks," I said, slipping my arm free. Aunt Patty joined us, her eyes gleaming with the excitement of someone with gossip to share. "Michelle, you're not getting any younger or fresher," she said bluntly. "I know this nice young man from my church. Let me introduce you to. He's a bit shy, but beggars can't be choosers at your age." I nodded politely, letting their words wash over me without response. They had no idea what was coming, and I was content to wait. I noticed my ex-fiancé standing next to Julia. He'd gone bald on top and gained at least 50 pounds. I couldn't help but feel a small surge of satisfaction at his physical decline. Finally, it was time for the gift-giving portion of the baby shower. When my turn came, I approached Julia and handed her my present, an expensive set of baby blankets I'd carefully selected. "I'm happy for you both," I said, looking between Julia and my ex-fiancé. "You deserve each other." I injected just enough sarcasm into my voice that they would catch it, but no one else would notice. Julia's face flushed with anger, but before she could respond, there was a knock at the door. My mother went to answer it, and I felt my heart race with anticipation. "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong house," I heard my mother say. "No, I don't believe I do," replied a deep, confident voice that made me smile. "I'm looking for Michelle, I'm her husband." The room fell silent as a handsome man walked in, holding the hand of a small 2-year-old boy. All eyes darted between him and me, mouths hanging open in shock. Mom stammered, "Your husband?" I walked over to them, lifting our son into my arms. "Everyone, this is my husband, David, and our son, Ethan." The relatives immediately swarmed around us, bombarding David with questions and cooing over Ethan. I watched Julia's face transform from surprise to fury as all attention shifted away from her and her baby shower. As David charmed my relatives with his easy confidence, I thought back to how we met. A year after I'd left my hometown and started fresh in a new state, I landed a job at a marketing firm. David was the company director. At first, our relationship was strictly professional. Over time, we became friends, then began dating. When I got pregnant with Ethan, we decided to get married. I explained to David why I didn't want a big wedding. The memory of my failed engagement was still too painful. He understood completely, and we had a simple ceremony at City Hall with only his parents present. They were wonderful people who had welcomed me into their family without reservation. After receiving Julia's email, I called David, who was visiting his parents with Ethan in another state. We agreed he would join me at the baby shower, making a surprise entrance that would show my family exactly what they had missed by betraying me. Julia pushed her way through the crowd to confront me. "You did this on purpose," she hissed. "You deliberately stole all the attention from my baby shower." I met her gaze steadily. "You enjoyed being the center of attention when you ruined my engagement," I replied quietly. "Now it's my turn." My mother approached, tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you invite us to your wedding? We're your family." "You betrayed me," I said simply. "You chose Julia's happiness over mine. You don't get to be part of my happiness now." We stayed for another hour. David fielded questions about his company while Ethan charmed everyone with his toddler antics. When we prepared to leave for our hotel, my parents begged us to stay longer. "Can we at least have your new phone number and address?" Mom pleaded. "It doesn't matter," I replied, gathering Ethan's things. "We're leaving tomorrow." As we walked out the door, I saw Julia standing alone, watching us. For a brief moment, I thought I saw regret in her eyes. Then she turned away, and I knew nothing had really changed. The next morning, we flew back home, leaving my stunned family behind. David held my hand throughout the flight, occasionally asking if I was okay. I was better than okay. For 5 years, I had imagined confronting my family, showing them the life I had built without them. Reality had exceeded my expectations. "Did you see Julia's face?" I whispered to David as Ethan napped between us. "She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon." He chuckled. "Your whole family was shocked. I think your dad almost fainted when I introduced myself as your husband." After we returned home, the emails started coming. Every day, sometimes twice a day, my parents wrote to me. They wanted to be part of their grandson's life, they said. They claimed Ethan needed grandparents, that we needed to reconcile. I didn't respond at first, just saved the emails in a folder labeled family. After thinking for several days, I finally replied to one of my mother's emails. I didn't mince words. I told her I didn't want to reconcile, that I couldn't forgive them for what they had done. I added that Ethan already had loving grandparents in David's parents. The email stopped after that. For 6 months, there was silence. I tried not to think about my family, focusing instead on my job, my husband, and our son. We were happy, the 3 of us. We didn't need anyone else. Then, on a Saturday morning in October, the doorbell rang. David was out with Ethan at the park, so I was alone. I opened the door and felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Standing on my doorstep were my parents, both looking older than I remembered. "How did you find our address?" I demanded, not inviting them in. Mom looked at me with pleading eyes. "We need to talk to you, Michelle. Your sister had her baby." She pulled out her phone and showed me photos of Julia holding a newborn. A little girl, they named her Emma. "We know we were wrong," Dad added, his voice gruff with emotion. "We sided with Julia when we should have stood by you. We want to talk about it, to try to make things right." I noticed their suitcases then. They had clearly expected me to welcome them in, to let them stay. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "There's a cafe down the street," I said, "we can talk there." Disappointment flashed across my mother's face. I could see she had hoped for a warmer reception, perhaps envisioning a tearful reunion where all was forgiven. But I wasn't ready for that, wasn't sure I'd ever be. At the cafe, we sat at a corner table. My parents looked nervous, out of place. I ordered coffee for all of us and waited for them to speak. "We're sorry," Mom began, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. "We should have supported you and Julia, when she and your fiancé." She trailed off, unable to finish. When they betrayed me, I supplied. When they humiliated me in front of our entire family, and you took their side. Dad winced. We handled it badly, Michelle. We thought we were doing the right thing by encouraging you to forgive them, but we were wrong. Yes, you were, I agreed. You chose Julia over me, you always did. That's not true, Mom protested weakly. I raised an eyebrow, isn't it? When we were kids, she broke my science project the night before it was due. You told me to let it go because she was younger. When she borrowed my prom dress without asking and spilled punch all over it, you told me it was just a dress. And when she stole my fiancé, you told me to be happy for her. I took a sip of my coffee. So yes, you always chose her over me. They were silent for a long moment. Then Dad cleared his throat. We'd like to stay for a few days. Get to know our grandson. No, I said firmly, that's not going to happen. I'll send you photos and videos of Ethan by email, but I'm not ready to have you in our lives. But we're family, Mom insisted, tears in her eyes. Family doesn't betray each other, I replied. Family stands by each other. You didn't stand by me when I needed you most. After finishing our coffee, I drove them to a nearby hotel. Mom cried as they checked in, and Dad looked defeated. I felt a twinge of guilt but pushed it away. They had made their choice 5 years ago. Now they had to live with the consequences. In the weeks that followed, Julia sent me emails too. She wrote that she wanted to reconcile, that she missed having a sister. I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't hate her anymore, the rage I'd felt had dulled over time, but I didn't trust her either. A year passed. David and I celebrated Ethan's 3rd birthday with a small party at our house. David's parents flew in for the weekend, bringing presents and love. I found myself watching them with Ethan, seeing the joy on their faces as they played with him. They were wonderful grandparents, attentive and loving. Ethan was lucky to have them. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I checked my email and found a long message from my mother. She wrote that Julia had caught her husband, my ex-fiancé, with another woman. They were getting divorced. I stared at the screen for a long time, unsure how to feel. I didn't feel the satisfaction I might have expected, just a dull acknowledgement that karma had finally caught up with them. I closed the email without responding. That night, as I lay in bed beside David, his arm draped protectively over me, I placed a hand on my stomach. I was 8 weeks pregnant with our second child, though we hadn't told anyone yet. I knew that once the baby was born, my parents would find a way to contact me again. They were persistent, if nothing else. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about how differently my life had turned out from what I'd planned. 5 years ago, I thought I knew exactly where my life was headed. Now, nothing was the same, and yet, everything was better than I could have imagined. 4 months passed, and my pregnancy was now obvious. I'd had to buy new clothes to accommodate my growing belly, and Ethan was excited about becoming a big brother. We'd told him he was getting a baby sister, and he'd immediately started making plans for all the things he would teach her. David and I had decided to name her Olivia, after his grandmother. At my last ultrasound, the doctor had confirmed that everything was progressing normally. I was due in 3 months, and we were busy preparing the nursery, painting the walls a soft mint green and assembling the crib that David's parents had sent us. I still hadn't told my parents or Julia about the pregnancy. I knew I would eventually, probably after Olivia was born, but for now, I was enjoying the peace. No judgment, no unsolicited advice, no drama. Just our little family preparing to welcome its newest member. One evening in May, I was sitting on the couch, my feet propped up on pillows as David massaged them, when my phone dinged with a new email. I checked it and froze. "What is it?" David asked, noticing my expression. "It's from my sister," I said, scanning the message. "She wants to know if I got the previous emails from my mom about her divorce. Are you going to answer?" I thought for a moment, then put the phone down. No, not now. The next morning, another email arrived, this one from my mother. She wrote that she and Dad were thinking of moving closer to us, that they missed Ethan and wanted to be part of his life. She added that Julia was struggling with her divorce and single motherhood, suggesting that I should reach out to her. I closed the email without responding. I wasn't ready to have them nearby, wasn't ready to let them back into my life so completely. Maybe someday, but not yet. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon, I was in the kitchen making lunch when the doorbell rang. David was upstairs helping Ethan with his bath after a messy morning of painting, so I waddled to the door, one hand supporting my lower back. I opened the door and couldn't believe my eyes. Standing there was Julia, holding a baby girl who appeared to be about 6 months old. "Surprise," she said weakly, attempting a smile, "can I come in?" I was too shocked to refuse. I stepped aside, and she entered, looking around curiously at our home. "Nice place," she commented, bouncing the baby gently as she fussed, "This is Emma." I stared at my niece, seeing hints of Julia in her tiny features. "What are you doing here, Julia?" She sighed, looking tired. "Mom told me your address." "I know I should have called first, but I was afraid you wouldn't agree to see me." "You're right, I wouldn't have," I said bluntly. Before Julia could respond, I heard footsteps on the stairs. David appeared with a freshly bathed Ethan in his arms. He stopped short when he saw Julia. "Hello, Julia," he said, his tone neutral but not friendly. Julia nodded, her eyes widening as she noticed my pregnant belly. "You're pregnant again," she said. "Mom and Dad don't know, do they?" "No," I confirmed, "and I'd appreciate if you didn't tell them." David set Ethan down, and our son immediately ran to me, hiding behind my legs as he stared curiously at Julia and the baby. "I'll finish lunch," David said, giving my shoulder a supportive squeeze before heading to the kitchen. He knew I needed to have this conversation alone. "Let's sit," I suggested, gesturing to the living room. Julia settled on the couch, arranging Emma on her lap. I sat in the armchair across from her, with Ethan climbing up to sit beside me. "Why are you here?" I asked again. She looked down at her daughter, then back at me. "I wanted to apologize. Not just with an email or a phone call, but face to face." She took a deep breath. "What I did to you was unforgivable. I was jealous of you, I always had been. You were smarter, prettier, more successful. Mom and Dad were always praising you, comparing me to you." I laughed without humor. "That's not how I remember it. They always took your side." "Maybe they did," she conceded, "but they were always telling me I should be more like you. And then you got engaged to Ryan, and he was everything I thought I wanted." "So you stole him from me," I said flatly. "Yes," she admitted, her voice small, "and look how that turned out." She gestured to Emma, a failed marriage and a daughter who will barely know her father. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, satisfaction that she had gotten what she deserved, but also an unexpected pang of sympathy. I knew what it was like to raise a child, how hard it could be even with a supportive partner. Doing it alone must be terrifying. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Julia continued. "I know I don't deserve it. But I wanted Emma to know her aunt and her cousin. I wanted to try to build something new between us, if you're willing." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The confident, sometimes cruel girl I had grown up with was gone. In her place was a woman who looked exhausted and a little broken. "I can't promise anything," I said finally, "but we can start small. Maybe emails, photos of the kids. Eventually, maybe visits." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you," she whispered, tears in her eyes. We talked for another hour. She told me about her life as a single mother, about the affair that had ended her marriage, about how our parents were struggling with getting older. I told her about my job, about Ethan's preschool adventures, about the daughter we were expecting. That night, after Ethan was asleep, David and I sat on the back porch, watching the sunset. I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling Olivia kick inside me. "What are you thinking?" he asked, stroking my hair. "About family," I replied, "about forgiveness." "Are you going to let them back in?" I considered the question carefully. Not all at once, I decided, but maybe gradually, for Ethan and Olivia's sake, if nothing else. The next day, I sent my mother an email. I attached a recent photo of Ethan and told her about the baby girl we were expecting in 3 months. I didn't say I forgave them or invite them to visit, but it was a start. 3 months later, Olivia Grace was born, 7 pounds, 6 ounces, with a head full of dark hair like her father's. David's parents flew in immediately, staying for 2 weeks to help with Ethan and the baby. When we brought Olivia home from the hospital, there was a package waiting on our doorstep. Inside was a beautiful hand-knitted baby blanket and a card signed by my parents and Julia. The card simply said, "Congratulations. We're here when you're ready." I showed the blanket to David, running my fingers over the soft yarn. "My mom taught me to knit when I was 10, I told him. She must have spent weeks making this. I placed the blanket in Olivia's crib, next to the one David's mother had given us. 2 blankets, from 2 sets of grandparents. Maybe someday, Olivia would know both. I didn't know exactly what that relationship would look like, how much I could trust them, or how much of myself I could share. But I knew that holding on to anger wasn't helping anyone, least of all my children. As I tucked Ethan into bed that night, I realized that the greatest revenge wasn't cutting my family out of my life, it was building a beautiful life despite what they had done, and then choosing, on my own terms, whether to let them witness it.